Welcome to OLC 4.0. This is Term 2B. We are on Class 19, and today we're going to be discussing Assignment 27 and Assignment 28, Part A, and looking at, I believe, actually it says using antonyms, but I think it's actually going to be suffixes today. I think we already covered antonyms, sorry. It is May 15th, 2025, and this is Jillian Percy. All right, here are our learning goals today. Use appropriate strategies to expand my vocabulary through reading and writing. Use my knowledge of the organizational structure of a variety of graphic texts to identify the purpose of a text, locate information, and extract pertinent details. Explain how the form of a graphic text helps the reader understand the information or message. Use appropriate strategies to activate and build on prior knowledge of the content of the graphic selections. Use appropriate strategies to locate information in different types of texts, including graphic texts, and use appropriate strategies to make inferences about and interpret different types of texts, including graphic texts. Make connections between personal experiences and the context of texts to consolidate and extend understanding of different types of texts, including graphic texts. Woo. And then demonstrate understanding of a variety of texts commonly read in daily life. That's a lot to cover, but I'm sure we'll be able to it. Basically, we're going to start looking at expanding vocabulary. Now, technically, I don't know if this is expanding the vocabulary, but just making sure that you understand these particular markers in English, basically. So suffixes. Suffixes are any kind of little extra ending that comes at the end of any type of a base word, and it changes or modifies its meanings. Some of them we see so often we don't even realize that they are a suffix. For example, really common ones when we see a noun that has an S or an ES, we usually know that it means the noun is plural. So cup becomes cups, box becomes boxes. So that S or that ES are a type of suffix. Okay, so just kind of going into this again, because I know every language does it a little bit differently, but for English, for most regular nouns, we simply add an S to the end of the word. Bat becomes bats, chair becomes chairs. Now, some sounds in English sound so close to an S that adding an extra S won't really work because it'll just sound like we're saying S. So those sounds are CH, which is ch, SH, sh, SS, s, and X. So for all of those, we add an ES, but sounds more like as, like bench becomes benches, box becomes boxes, glass becomes glasses, and dish becomes dishes. Now, there are some words that don't follow those rules. There are a few nouns that end in Y, and when they do that, we take away the Y and put an I instead, and then we add ES. So baby with a Y becomes babies, BABIES. City with a Y becomes cities, and the Y becomes an I, ES. Ruby becomes rubies. Not really sure of the reason. Y and I kind of work together as teams. I don't know why we don't just leave it with the Y, but for some reason we don't in English. And then there are a few words that have what we call unique or irregular ways of showing plurals. A lot of times this is because those words are borrowed from another language. Like the ones we're about to do, a lot of these are from the German language, and so it does the plurals the way they do their plurals. So child becomes children, woman becomes women, goose becomes geese, and mouse becomes mice. Those aren't common, but you do have to be aware of them because if you said like mouses were running around, right, that would technically be a grammatical error. All right, ing is another one. Ing can be used to show that an action is happening continuously or also that it's happening currently. Like if somebody were to call me and say, hey, what are you doing right now? I am running. I'm doing it right now. Or I could also say, every morning I go running, right? It's not something that happens once, like I jumped over a log. I'm running for a while. When we're doing that, so if a simple word like jump, J-U-M-P, I can add an ing, jumping, camp, camping. But if that was a verb that ended in E, like long vowel E happens all the time, we don't keep the E there. we drop the E and we just add the ing. And I think it's because E and I, again, in English have very similar sounds, so they just drop it. Like becomes liking, L-I-K-I-N-G. Hate becomes hating. Take becomes taking. One of the reasons for this is there are some words in English that are very similar. So, for example, let's say I had the word hop. Okay, we'll start with hope right now. Hope. Okay, I drop the E and it becomes hoping. Okay, hop looks much the same. For hop, there's no E to drop. What I do is I double the P to make sure it's really obvious. Hey, this isn't the word hope, it's hop. And we do that for, oh, wait, a whole bunch of English words. Where'd it go? Okay. So any kind of small one-syllable word that has the short vowel, the a, e, I, in English, then we double that last consonant to help show that the vowel stays short, even though we've added that ending. So skip-ing, swim-ing, hop-ing. And we do the same thing for ed. Ed shows that a verb is in the past tense. Like today I jump, yesterday I jumped. Land, landed, vent, vented. I want to point out, even though it has a D there, sometimes it'll sound a little bit more like a T. I don't, again, know why, it just kind of seems to happen. If it already ends in an E, then we just add the D. We don't add two E's, otherwise we would end up with a very strange word. So hate becomes hated. I don't do double E, because if I did that, double E in English has an E sound. So it would become more like hat-eed, line-eed, right? It changes the sound. So line becomes lined, fade becomes fade. Just like for ing, if it's a short one-syllable vowel, a, e, I, a, then we double the last consonant to show that it still stays short. Skipped, hopped. There are also irregular forms for this. Swim can become swam, run become ran, and come becomes came. There's actually quite a few of those. That's only a very small selection. So a lot of times we're doing this, when we're reading these kind of suffixes, we're so used to them that our brain automatically gives us the information. So what I'm doing is kind of slowing down the process and causing us to think about it for a second. So we're looking at the words that have a suffix. Think about what that information is telling us. Is it telling us that the action is continuous, that the action is in the past, or is it actually a plural noun, which can be different? He raced down the road. So ed tells us past action. Okay. The trees are beautiful. So trees are a plural noun. The goat is jumping down the mountain. So jumping is a continuous action. The boy dreamed as he slept. Okay, these are both showing the past. Now, it could be in a sentence that one would show past and one would show something else, but in this particular case, they're both showing past. Many cities have skating parks. So this is actually, I'm not crazy about that one, but anyways, continuous action. Okay, there are a lot of other suffixes. I want to start with the easiest ones first. We will be looking at some more of these next class. Okay, I'm not going to all reread the learning goals again. All right, here we are on lesson 9, which is about symbols and emoticons. And I'm just going to kind of read this little text here. It says, in lesson 7, you looked at how to read a textbook. In this lesson, you're going to look at how to read a type of text you may not have thought of as a writing text. If you're getting information out of it when you look at it and you think about it, then that's considered reading, no matter what. As you've seen, there are many types of reading that people do every day and many reasons for doing so. Visual text is any kind of text that is visual. In other words, you look at it. There may be words or symbols or pictures involved, but together they work to enhance the meaning of what you're looking for. Can you think of any examples of text where the pictures are just as important, if not more important than the words? Sure, things like comic books, graphic novels, maps, tables, charts, label diagrams, timelines, and even things like advertisements or instruction manuals. It's really important to understand how the organizational structure of these different visual texts works, because it is different than your normal sort of sentence and paragraph format. And you want to be able to understand it so that you can identify its purpose, locate information, and identify important details. So, how does the form of a visual text help the reader to understand the information or message it is trying to convey? They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and you will have to be the judge. So here we have, this is a really common symbol you'll see. What does it generally mean? Okay, the dove is generally considered a symbol for peace, right? It's based on a biblical story about a dove that goes out and um, finds some green plants that shows that people are at peace. But anyways, the idea here is that there are symbols and that we get used to in our culture to a certain symbol meaning something. Like if I saw a heart, I know it means somebody's talking about love. The wheel in the Indian flag is considered a symbol of peace. Here we're talking about some other ways that we use the word symbol, like water can be considered a symbol of life. Sometimes we use numbers, letters, or signs in mathematics or music. So the symbol for oxygen is a capital O. Sometimes it will be not like a set symbol, but like we think of it. So here they're talking about the example of a private jet can become a symbol of wealth because only somebody who's really, really rich has the money to spend on something as extravagant and, you know, essentially a little bit useless as a private jet. Okay. So, all right. Now, when this was written, this particular thing, I think it was when emoticons were still kind of more popular. We've kind of moved on a little bit to emojis. I didn't take this out. I might next time. Emoticons are which is the original word for it, emoticons. The first part of the word is like emotion, and the second part comes from the word icon, which is like a picture. So it's like a picture of an emotion, which we have also shortened to emoji. Here are the original old-fashioned emoticons, where you could use like your keyboard to create it. A lot of times these days, if you try and type these in, it'll translate it and turn it back into an emoji. Because I'm not sure if you're younger, if you will know what these mean, there are some links that you can go to if you're not sure of those. There's actually in Wikipedia a little list of emoticons and what they mean, so you're welcome to go there to check these out. Number two, why do you think emoticons or emojis have become so popular? That's an opinion one, so whatever you think that's reasonable, just remember to put it in a complete sentence. List 3 other emoticons that you've used or seen, what they mean, and when you use them. Now, I want to point this out. This is 3 different things that they are asking for, okay? So it's really important because people will sometimes do part of this and then they lose marks, even though I'm sure they know the answer, okay? So, 1, show me the emoticon, okay? 2, what does it mean? And then 3, when do you use them? Okay. Sometimes I'll have people just try to like put the emoticon on there and they don't really get the marks for this. So here I've got my emoticon. Hang on a second. I've lost a little bit of my page here. My apologies. So here's my emoticon. And I might say something like, here's the silly face emoji. It means the person is acting silly or trying to be funny. I would use it if I was talking to a close friend to make sure they knew something I said was meant to be a joke or sarcastic. Okay, brainstorm a list of reasons for using symbols instead of words. So think about in just your daily life, when is it useful to have a symbol? Who would be helped by a symbol instead of words? And think about why. So I'm looking for several reasons there. Number 5, do you consider punctuation like periods, commas, exclamation marks to be symbols? Why or why not? Now, I'm going to suggest that you might want to take a look at a dictionary or an online encyclopedia such as Wikipedia to find a definition for punctuation before you answer this question. I would also think about what we talked about as our definition of a symbol. Now, occasionally I get students who will just write me out a dictionary definition. That isn't actually an answer. Okay, I need your answer in your words. You're certainly welcome to mention the definition if you want to, but then you would still need to explain why you consider it correct or incorrect and why you consider punctuation to be symbols or not symbols. I also want to point out different dictionaries will give different definitions, so it's not necessarily that they're all going to say the same thing. So, for example, you can't say something like, I think they are symbols because the dictionary said so. You also can't say, I think they are not symbols because the dictionary didn't say anything about symbols. The next one in red is me just writing a definition. Symbols are a mark or character used as a conventional representation of an object, function, or process, e.g. the letter or letters standing for a chemical element or a character in musical notation. Guys, when I read that, it's really obvious you didn't write that yourself, right? That isn't how we generally talk. So I don't give you the credit for that, okay? Now, if you do want to look at the dictionary, it's fine to say something like, well, the Collins Dictionary said blah, 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 and I think punctuation marks are or are not symbols because, and explain your idea. Now, you're still giving credit to the dictionary, but you're not just using the dictionary definition as your entire answer, okay? And because you're telling me that it's the dictionary definition, that you're being honest about that, then again, you don't lose marks that way. Hopefully it all makes sense. Now, the last bit of this question is a whole bunch of different symbols. It's worth 3 marks. I know it's kind of a fragment, but most of these are probably pretty obvious. Occasionally get people who get mixed up and just pick the first 3. No, you've got to tell me for every single one of these. There's 12 of them. What does each one mean? If you're not sure, you can search on Google. The second row, for example, are certain types of street signs. The third row are different types of warning materials, but you can't just say warning materials. You have to tell me exactly what it warns for. So if you need to do a little bit of research to figure that out, go for it. Here are some possible links. This first one shows you WHMIS symbols. Those are safety symbols. The second one is where you could find roadsides in Canada. And then the third one is just a link to a blog post about symbols and what they mean. Okay. Moving on. Sorry, sometimes things come undone when I transfer it from Google to PowerPoint. I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't want to stay there. You can see it kind of keeps bouncing back. I don't know. Sorry, I can't make it sit there in there. So these are some tattoos because tattoos are one type of visual icon or sometimes considered a symbol. They are another form of text that you see often on a daily basis. Tattoos can hold great meaning for the person who has one or more of them. Sometimes they may tell a story or they may indicate spiritual beliefs, show what a person was interested in, as well as a whole host of other information. A picture really is worth 1,000 words. So if you see something like this, for example, this symbol, really strong chance that guy is a sailor, right? Butterflies are sometimes considered a symbol of transformation. This is a beautiful one. I'm not sure if this is a kind of a favorite scene of theirs, but you will see a lot of different tattoos that have certain meanings. So part B of assignment 27 is we are going to kind of design our own tattoo. So in our novel, I want you to think about Jimmy or Teresa from Jimmy Comes Home. And if they were going to get a tattoo, what might they get? Now, this should represent their character. Okay, so I want you to include at least 3 different elements, visual parts of this tattoo, and explain why they are relevant to that character. You can draw the tattoo and label the 3 relevant parts. I am looking for 9 marks for this. So 1 mark for each of the three elements, 1 mark for an explanation for why it's relevant to that person, and then 1 mark for drawing it, okay? So for each of the three elements. So I'll show you what I mean. I give you a little space where you can do it, but you can use something else if you wanted to. So here I wanted to point out my three elements are I've got this wolf, there's a moon, and I kind of tried to do like a tree that sort of curled around like it was sort of holding them all in. So this is my imaginary tattoo. So those are my three visual elements. So now I'm going to explain what they are and why I think they are relevant to that person. I'm going to do it about Gary because Gary isn't one of the options, so I don't kind of give away answers here. I think Gary might have a wolf by itself under the moon, and there should be a bare tree in silhouette as well. The wolf is to convey the idea of being dangerous and loneliness. The moon is to show it as dark because I think Gary feels safer at night because he can hide and do his drugs easier then. And the tree is bare to show how lifeless he feels. Okay, so 3 pictures or 3 parts, 3 visual parts, 3 sort of labels for what they are, and then 3 explanations for 9 marks. Okay, so now we are moving on to lesson 10, which is all about advertising. Now, I get a lot of students tell me, oh, I don't have this kind of stuff. I do have packages for this. If you are in a facility where it's tricky to get access to the internet, I have some of these. You would talk to your tutor and get that. Most people aren't in that situation. This particular assignment uses print magazine ads, which I probably will change later, but for right now, we're still going to use it. It still does exist. There are still magazines out there. We're going to talk about this in a minute, but I just wanted you to be aware, like, I know that this is sort of a dying art in a sense. Okay, so advertising is the art of convincing people to spend money they don't have for something they don't need. And that's a very cynical quote by Will Rogers, who was a famous actor at some point. But you have to admit, there are many times when you're watching TV or reading a magazine, or even just driving down the road minding your own business, and suddenly you hear or see an advertisement and then suddenly you feel like you need it, right? So it's important as a consumer that you become literate in reading and or watching or hearing advertisements because they are trying to get your money, and sometimes they will do it in not so honest or sort of sneaky ways that can affect your emotions and your thinking. So all advertisements target a specific audience, and they're always created for a specific purpose, normally to get you to buy something. Often advertisements will try to appeal to more than one group of people, what we call our audience. After all, the more people that are influenced by the ad, the more people the company doing the advertisement makes. So I was pointing out, down here says not to everyone. A specific audience, it means not everybody on the planet is going to want to buy every type of product as that is created, right? A 5-year-old isn't buying a car. 80-year-old is probably not buying a dolly. So there are different people who are going to buy different types of products. So talking about the audience. Now, when we talk about a specific audience, it can be quite a broad category, or it can be very specific. Ads are often aimed at specific genders or certain age groups like kids, teenagers, young adults, like just college kind of age, middle-aged people or seniors. Sometimes specific income ranges, right? Anyone can buy a certain brand of orange juice, but luxury cars may be only affordable for a certain income bracket. Certain advertisements may make a big deal of how cheap they are, how they're a budget thing, which some people worry about, but not everybody does. Specific hobbies, activities, or lifestyles. Like if you're selling certain types of tools, you're going to be looking for people who actually use those tools. So maybe woodworking enthusiasts or people who do a lot of landscaping in their backyard. Certain hobbies might work better for young couples with no children, or maybe people who travel a lot. Also, advertisements can be aimed at certain regions, right? People who live near a lot of nature may get a lot more out of advertisements about like backpacking equipment, whereas people who live near water might get a lot more advertisements about boating and things like that. So The people who design these ads are trying to make sure that their message gets to the people they're hoping have the money and the interest and the willingness to buy their product. So they do target people very specifically. Okay, so I was able to show this last year. This year I can't show it. If you get a chance, there is a really hilarious Heinz ketchup commercial that has Ed Sheeran in it. Okay, so if you have a chance to watch it, turn this off, go watch it, and then come back and talk to me. Like I said, normally we would watch it right now, but YouTube's being very tricky, so I can't do that. Once you've seen it, think about who are they targeting and who is their audience. Now, again, people might say, well, everybody. But, my 85-year-old mom would have no idea who this guy is. Okay. So it wouldn't necessarily appeal to her. It wouldn't even necessarily be funny to her. She might be horrified in fact, she probably would be horrified by somebody bringing their own ketchup to a restaurant and using it to put on their fancy food. She would 100% be having heart failure here. So they're targeting a certain audience. What age range might be interested? What income bracket level, right? Somebody really rich, traditional old money rich, might not think this is kind of funny because he's kind of making fun of rich people a little bit, isn't he? Right? So that's one thing to think about. Then we've got this Nike ad, and you see kind of this old-fashioned blue high-top shoe. Used to be really popular in the 70s and still is popular for basketball, but used to be like everybody wore these. And the ad says, the Nike Sweet Classic High is comfortable while still remaining in style. With great quality and a wide variety of color options, these sneakers are perfect for casual use. Stay fly, stay fresh, and get yourself a pair. Just do it. So who made this ad? Nike. Okay. What are they selling? They're selling these shoes. Who is the audience? Now, running shoes may make you think of young people because of how they're selling it. It's a classic. Still remains in style. To me, they are aiming at a slightly older audience that still wants to stay fit and maybe still wants to think of themselves as young. How are they trying to convince you to buy their product? There's lots of color options. It's good quality. And then they start trying to use like some sort of slang that will imply you're sort of hip and with it if you use these. All right, this is a slightly different type of ad. It's what's sometimes called a public service ad. For anyone who's out in Radio Land and can't see the picture right now, there's a close-up of two legs, and one is a human bare leg, and one is, it looks like a robot leg. I suppose it's an extra fancy artificial leg. I've never seen one like this, but it's super fancy. And it says, spare parts for humans are not as original as those for cars. Don't drink and drive. And then in tiny little letters in the bottom, it says, issued in public interest by BMW. So it isn't initially obvious who made the ad, but BMW made the ad. What are they selling? Well, in theory, they're not selling anything, unless you think they made the leg, which I don't think is the case. They're selling the idea that you can buy fast, sporty cars and still behave responsible. They're selling the idea that they are the kind of company that cares about people, and so they're encouraging you to not use their product irresponsibly. Okay? So how are they making their product compelling? They're looking like, hey, we're the good guys. We know that accidents can happen. We're not encouraging you to be irresponsible and drive too fast or drive drunk. So it's a kind of a sneaky ad, right? Because they're trying to get on the customer's good side without directly selling them a product. Okay, so for this part, we're going to be looking at how people are portrayed. Portrayed is like, how are they picture them on stage? What are they wearing? How are they acting? What emotions are they giving off in the ad? So your task is to go through some magazines until you have found some advertisements targeted through the following group of people. Now, I want to point out, you do not actually need an actual magazine. You're certainly welcome to do this using advertisements found in the internet, but I want you to use the ones that are in the format of a magazine ad, okay? It's a very specific format, which we'll talk about shortly. Now here, sorry again, this is part, I didn't write this. It says, make sure you don't rip out the magazine ad. Yes, obviously, right? We're all grown-ups here. Don't tear apart someone else's magazine if they've got it. Just take a picture with your phone. Now, you will want to hang on to these because you do need one of these ads later on for part B. Again, actually in Silicon, it's really hard to find print magazines anymore. There aren't many stores that seem to sell them. There used to be all over the place. They do have them at the library. Definitely don't rip them out there. Okay, again, take a picture of it. Sometimes you'll find magazines at nursing stations, doctors or dentists' office. Libraries at the grade school nearby you might have it. Public library, used to be some small stores, used to be everybody had magazines. There's not a lot of profit in them, though, so that kind of has gone out of the wayside. So in your unit, you'll see sort of a little chart like this. And down the side, we're looking at these different people, women, men, teenagers, people of color, parents, families, children, senior citizens or elders, rich people or celebrities. And then you want to find an ad. What are they selling in the ad? And how is the person represented? Now, sometimes people will start telling me about the ad. They'll be like, oh, there's a sunset and there's a mountain and there's a car. Okay, but what about the person? Now, if there is no person, don't use that ad. You can't, right? Even if it was an ad targeting women, like let's say it was an ad selling lipstick, but there was no woman in the ad, then you can't use that ad. It doesn't meet the criteria for this assignment, okay? So this assignment is worth 20 marks, but if you choose ads that don't have any people in them, you don't get the marks, okay? So this is a crucial one. I do look for it. Please be cautious of this. Okay, so once you've got an ad for each category, which hopefully you can, fill in the chart, tell me what the ad is selling and how people are portrayed. Don't just send me the ads. I've had people do that too. Here you go, here's the ads. No, I'm not the one doing the work. You're supposed to be doing the work. Be very specific when you're telling what they're selling. Don't just tell me they're selling makeup. Nope, they're selling CoverGirl lipstick, okay? When you're telling me how they're portrayed, you could describe their feelings. Are they sad, happy, disappointed, embarrassed? You could describe their appearance, fancy, athletic, poor, sexy, hip, old-fashioned, tough. You could also describe the overall atmosphere given off in the ad. Successful, adventurous, bullied, left out, tidy, messy, etc. So here is an example. This is a magazine ad I found. Again, for those who are in Radio Land, there is a senior citizen couple facing away from the camera. They are staring off into the sunset, standing in a field of golden wheat, and there's a soft golden sunset, and they're wearing sort of odd purple two-dimensional crowns on their head. And then it says their big tagline is "Live like royalty." And it says Kingsbridge Home Healthcare Service, the best home health care on this side of town. We want to make choosing home care simple and convenient while providing a peace of mind that your loved one can remain independent in their home. Come to us and we will make sure you and your loved one are cared for like royalty in your palace. Call us now and let our specialist guide you. 347-954-9074. So this is an ad that has senior citizens in it. What are they selling? They are selling something called Kingsbridge Home Healthcare Services for Seniors. How are they being portrayed? Well, the seniors are shown in a pretty positive light, right? Like they're not, they still seem relatively healthy. We can't really see their faces, but they seem more or less happy because they're got this big golden glow around them with crowns on them, like they're the king and the queen. So that's how they're being portrayed, okay? Now, some people find this chart a little bit too small for their handwriting. You're welcome to kind of like just remake the chart on some lined paper if that works for you. I have pretty big handwriting myself and would find it really hard to write neatly in that little chart, that is important. Please don't write so small that I can't read it or so messy that I can't read it. Okay, super important. So here is another one. What type of person is in the picture and how are they being portrayed? Well, here we've got a woman. What are they selling? It's a little bit tricky. I don't know if you can tell. It's from Protein World, sort of underneath this. Hang on. There's like a little protein powder that they're selling. Okay, so Protein World, protein power. How are they portraying her? They're portraying her as thin, sexy, fit, beach body ready. Okay. Now, totally different one. Here's got a man in it. It's also selling protein powder, although I think it's a different company. Sorry, I can't quite get the company's name. But here they're not going for thin and sexy. They're going for big, powerful. Um, he's got this weird golden glow around him, especially around his muscles, almost as if he were some sort of superhero. So he's being portrayed as tough, very muscular, big kind of fancy tattoos, a dragon, right? How serious is that? So very different portrayal about the results you're going to get from more or less the same product. Now, the internet is tricky. And sometimes when people will use it, they'll take it at faith. Like if I looked for magazine ads, then anything it brings up must be a magazine ad. But that doesn't actually happen. So here's an example of some things that when I said to Google magazine ads, it pulled these up. Okay. Just because your search engine grabbed it when you said magazine ad doesn't mean that it actually counts as a magazine ad. So what's wrong with some of these images and how do I know that they don't count? Well, okay, first of all, this is clearly not a magazine. This is just a picture of someone's desk, and they've got the word advertising on the screen. So probably somewhere is the word ad, and so it got pulled up, even though it's not a magazine ad. Here, the opposite problem. It's a magazine, and it's not an ad, right? This is Elle magazine, and the future is Blackpink. Now, sometimes I've had people try and use this sort of stuff, and then they're like, well, I don't know what they're selling. Well, they're not. That picture isn't selling a product. If anything, it's kind of promoting the group Blackpink, but it's not selling you a product, right? That's because it's not a ad, it's a magazine. So I wouldn't use that either. And this third one is a little bit tricky, right? There's a picture of a really young man holding a gun, and it says, in England, parents have called to abolish junior school exams. I have no clue how these two things relate. It doesn't really look like an ad. It doesn't look like a magazine. It might be a photograph to go along with some sort of newspaper or maybe a magazine story, but they're certainly not selling anything as far as I can tell. So again, don't use it. If you look at an ad and you can't tell what they're selling, don't use that one. Use something different, okay? Okay. Why is it so important that I'm saying it must be a magazine ad? Well, for one reason, we're going to be using this in part 2 as well. And we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of advertising hooks and how they sell products. Other types of advertising are not necessarily going to use these same types of hooks. So like if it was an event advertising, like if we put a poster out for a bingo, for example, I'm not really selling a product. It's not necessarily going to have the same types of methods of selling. Advertising to sell a magazine, again, also the same thing. Contests, photography contests, 5K runs, don't use them. Doesn't work very well. Also public information ads like, oh, here's your upcoming tax date. Again, not really selling a product, very hard to use. Make sure they're selling a product. Now, the reason why I'm saying magazine as compared to Facebook, for example, is Facebook ads often don't work quite the same way because they will often have an interactive element where you kind of click here and you'll go to another page and there will be more information. And because of that, they create their ads very differently than older fashioned magazine ads. So some of what I'm talking about won't quite work there. In this particular ad, you also couldn't use it because there's no person there. right? There's a cute little acorn character, and it's targeted towards children, but there's no actual child in this ad, so you could not use it for our purposes. So here's an example of a photo contest ad, right? There is a young man in the ad, but they're not targeting only young men. They're not really even selling you something. They're trying to get you to participate in it. So it's not going to have the same kind of advertising hooks. So it's not going to work for what we want to do for part B as well. Again, same thing for the magazine. Here, advertising a concert. Again, same thing. Don't use that. Now, how can you tell it's a magazine ad? So typically, a magazine ad is the full page of a magazine, which is around about 8.5 by 11 or a little bit bigger. They're usually long rectangles, and they're going to be shown in portrait view like this guy over here, right? See him? Now, the name of the product or the brand, the people that made it, is going to be somewhere on that page. Even if it's really small, it'll be there. It will not have the name of the magazine on it, because in that case, it'd be a magazine cover. And there are no moving graphics, because that will only work on a computer. Okay? So here's an example of what I mean. I put the words magazine ads up here. Not all of these are ads. Some of these are a picture of an ad that links to another article. Okay? Here's one talking about 10 best magazine ad examples. The picture itself isn't an ad. I could click onto it and go to some ads, right? Here's a picture of a magazine. Let me see. More pictures of magazines. I would need to actually physically go into them and use them. I can't just use the first picture because it says, because I said magazine, that's what came up, right? Yeah, so 17 clever print ad images to complement your digital campaign. This kind of ad is great where you'll click on and it will have more. Just make sure it's the magazine type and not a video or an interactive Facebook type. I did check out some digital magazines because they do exist, but I found that they didn't really use traditional magazine ads. They instead use the type of digital ads that we're trying to avoid. So for the most part, the ones I looked at anyways, did not seem to work for that. Oh, and if you're having trouble finding certain types of magazine ads, you can get really specific. Like I could say magazine ads with senior citizens or magazine ads with children, but you still will need to check and make sure it actually has what you asked for and that really is a magazine ad, not a meme, not a magazine cover, not a newspaper article, because they are very different. Okay. So like here, senior, that's a magazine. Okay. Another magazine. This is more a photo that's being used by the New York Times to illustrate their articles, not really a magazine. So be cautious of that, okay? Where are we at? Okay, so let's say I have this as an example. What people group is in the ad? Now, it's hard to tell. I could use this for man. It's kind of tricky because even women would have a lot of that gear on. What are they selling? Well, they're selling Harley Davidson motorcycles. You can tiny little letters. It's down here. How is the person portrayed? This is tricky because they're kind of at a distance, but because of the scenery surrounding them, I would say they look peaceful or free. The black leather and the helmet makes them look very powerful. They're surrounded by beauty. And then the ad copy is like somewhere on an airplane, a man is trying to rip open a small bag of peanuts. I think that's why I also figured it was a man. Was there, like, here's this guy and he's so weak he can barely open a bag of peanuts compared to this powerful guy who's driving through the mountains, across the plains, right? So it's a different type of portrayal. That's the kind of thing to think about. Okay. Like I said, once you've got your ads, hang on to them because part B tomorrow, we're going to take one of those ads and we are going to turn it into a sort of a poster, essentially. If anyone's having trouble with this, let me know. I'm going to do a quick kind of show you, I think. Let me see if I can do this. Yeah, okay. So here quickly, magazine ad for teenagers. Okay. Now, if I do this, now, like I said, some things that are coming up, this is just a magazine, not actually a magazine ad. Same thing here. Here, this is a teen magazine from 1960. I don't know that you necessarily want to use that. So sometimes I'm getting kind of weird things. I'm going to try and phrase it differently and see if I get something different come up. Like, what if I say advertisement, how about print ad for teenagers. Let's see if that comes up. Okay, a little bit different stuff came up. Here, let me see. Visit. Okay. Huh. It's necessarily an ad. Oh, not a magazine ad. Anyways, hang on a second. So this is one. Although they're not really selling an ad, this becomes a public service announcement. They're trying to basically encourage people to not have babies really young, which is a different one. Let me think here. What else can we find here? This is what I'm saying is, okay, this is an old one. Now, this is a magazine ad. I couldn't use it because there's no people in it. Okay. Here, an older ad. This is intended to be teens. What are they advertising? Get your act together with Pocket Locker. What is that? Hang on a second. Oh, sorry, I've lost it. But this is the kind of thing where you could kind of pick some of these. You could take a screenshot. These are those kind of ads. So you can see how, like, when you pull something up, you can't just trust that Google is necessarily doing exactly what you asked it to do. Sometimes it isn't, or whatever, search engine you use. All right. If you're having trouble with this, send me a message and I will do my best to help you or steer you in the right direction. And good luck with it. If you are out there, we are heading out to Loch Sool today. So if there's any students out there who are wanting some help who are in Loch Sool, come on out and we will be there and are going to be happy to help you with your homework. And I hope we see lots of people out there today. Take care, and I will talk to you guys next week.